Hey, this is Nick the Mining Book Guy. It is the morning of Monday, January 28th, 2019. Hoping to get this video out later today. I've been working hard on it all night, but as you see in the title, simplifying the story for an immediate re-rate. That is the theme. I hope that theme gets across because I've made so many Sarama videos in the past, and yeah, this, in fact, if we're lucky, this will be my last video close to the bottom, and we'll see if I can convince you why that is. But before I get into the details, I need to give a shout out to my friend Jay, the FI fighter. You can see on his video page that I have a few. You see my little picture there from the London One-to-One. I had some nice podcast interviews. They've gotten some good feedback. I actually talked about Sarama in one of those parts, but definitely check out Jay's YouTube channel. He's one of the good guys in the industry, and I even wanted to mention that some of his videos with less views or listens, I really like those too, and I really hope he keeps experimenting with the YouTube channel, and I'll bring him up again in this video, but definitely wanted to give a shout out for my subscribers. But when we look at Sarama, I'm going to bring up the 3-year chart. We'll make it bigger. What an ugly chart. Oh, it's so tough. And I don't want to dwell on, well, actually, I have to mention, I was wrong about Sarama last year. When it was at 10 cents or 12 cents, I thought it was a fantastic buy. We'll look at it, 5 cents, under $10 million. This is a tough industry. I I can only say that the value is even better now, but I have to convince you that there are clear catalysts. And Sarama's been tough because I can see, some people, Chernobyl. I'll be giving a few shout outs here. Mediev. Like people are upset they don't see the news now. A key reason for the timing on this video is that a new PowerPoint was literally just released this weekend, and I have to say I helped contribute to it independently as a shareholder. No relationship with the company, but I am an activist shareholder, if you can say. And there's no company I've been trying more to influence. But hopefully, despite the lack of news, the new PowerPoint that's related to the recent news a few months ago, this one point will get across, and more people will decide to buy the stock over the next month because the immediate re-rate is deserved. This was the last news, November 27th. This was so important. Of course, the market shrugged. Unfortunately, I do think a little bit of that was the communication from the company is a little confusing. I'm here to try to quickly sort that out. Regaining 100% ownership of South Hoon Project, so important. Acacia is basically, on their way out of the picture. This really opens things up for Sarama. But of all the points on this news release, I think there are lots of people, if they were paying attention, they think, Sarama needs to raise money right away because there are cash payments involved. And one of them, US $750,000 on completion of all pertinent agreements. That is due very soon. Now, it is not due immediately. So important. The completion date has not occurred yet. And this is where I talked to Andrew Dinning, the CEO. Based on my interpretation, this is likely to be no earlier than March, probably something like April. We only have a heads of agreement. This heads of agreement is so important, but specifically the cash payments were split up so Sarama could fund it and not be in a desperate situation. Now the market is putting the company under pressure. It's trading at 5 cents. But I think there's a very good case that within the next month or two, Sarama could be trading at 7 cents, 8 cents, let alone 10 cents, get funding, make this first payment, and kind of be on their way. That's not a sure thing at all. I think 5 cents is the bottom. I'm going to touch on that again. But keep in mind, Sarama has well over $500,000 in the bank right now. They don't need to raise this month. I think Sarama is probably going to raise money or have some type of financing deal in March. The fact that there's options is important too. But again, this is not a desperate situation, but within the next couple months, something's going to happen here. And to get into why the 100% ownership is so important, it's this new PowerPoint. Oh, I guess, okay, we're going to try to put this all together. This video is a little longer, but importantly, we number one priority is talking about Acacia out of the way, getting this to be looked at more as a development story. Number two thing later in the video, we're going to be talking about Burkina Faso and why it's not as bad as it seems, despite, unfortunately, some negative news recently. And then talking about a peer comparison and throwing some other stuff at the end. But in the new PowerPoint, I love these two first slides. I tried to help a little bit, but again, this is the company making their own decisions. Undervalued development story, re-rate opportunity. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's this red box. This is what's new. This all comes together, and there'll be another slide we touch on. Yes, this is all of that red stuff here, and this is my favorite new slide. I think there's so much here. Going back to my friend Jay, the FI fighter, we talked about how these types of graphs can be dangerous because it's like, oh, the ounces in the ground are so cheap. And you can throw like crappy, worthless ounces into these things. There are so many mega projects where the gold isn't worth anything. But here, not only, okay, of course, Sarama looks super cheap, but there's a note on using oxide and free milling ounces for a possible heap leach project. Those ounces are so much more valuable than ounces that are either deeper in the ground or have issues with metallurgy, or too low grade. Sarama has valuable oxide ounces in the South Houndé project and Bondi, and actually the fresh ounces here, the sulfides, are more valuable. So you break that all down, and Sarama's still cheaper than the peers. I will spend a little more time on this slide than any other. West African Resources and Thor Explorations, it makes sense these are so valuable. These are high-grade ounces. These are more advanced projects. We're not expecting Sarama to be up there. But you start going down the list, you're like, whoa, Savary, $18, Sarama, $3. That is not a typo. This is what people don't get. Can you believe it that Savary has a higher market cap and enterprise value than Sarama? This is the most number one signal of like Sarama being undervalued, because they're literally next door and they have a JV to each other, and Sarama has so much more in Savary. It's not even worth my time to beat this horse to death even further, but Sarama is incredibly undervalued here. If Sarama was at 10 cents, I could still tell you it was undervalued, but it's at 5 cents and it's under a 10 million market cap. And the ounces Sarama has are more valuable because they have a legitimate project. Savary doesn't actually have a legitimate project. And Tieto Minerals is a company a lot of people don't know in North America, TIE, on the ASX in the Ivory Coast. But that's one that's closer to Sarama in terms of having a real project, and yet it's over 5 times as valued. So I think even if Sarama doubles in value, it still looks undervalued compared to peers, and we'll talk more about peers in later. But again, valuable ounces because there's a real project here. We're not taught. I think this could eventually be a much larger, greater than 100,000 ounce per year project. But Sarama's management is capable of putting a small heap leach into production. Low capex, high IRR, probably closer to maybe 60,000 ounces a year over mine life, even though you on the front end you have really great numbers. But also key is, from talking to Andrew, hammering out the heads of agreement with Acacia. He did that in London in November. He also told me he spoke to like a half a dozen private equity firms. Now, I should spend another minute on this as well. It's important to realize that London is a very different capital of finance than Canada. There are so many private equity firms out of there looking for projects like this. And this particular project, it couldn't have been done with Acacia in the picture. Acacia had no interest in this small capex, high high IRR type project, and so now we've taken that next step, and private equity could get involved in a variety of ways. They could take the company completely private, for a huge premium, like an acquisition. That's not ideal, but someone who buys into Sarama at 5 cents and it gets taken over at 10 cents, they'd be pretty happy. Not the long-term shareholders. That's an option. I think the most likely option is going to be something where a private equity firm takes a minority position, really helps with funding down the road, and even has incentive to bring in a strategic, like someone like a Teranga or some mid-tier. So that could be a win-win down the road. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it's a huge option that a lot of other companies don't have. And so again, think development project more than exploration, even though there's so much further exploration potential here, and it's so undervalued at under a 10 million market cap right now. Now, yes, now we do need to talk about Burkina Faso in general and some of the problems. So this is a map from Sarama, so we can see they're in the southwest. Here's a map from West African, and I'm just showing you, this shows all the different mines. Here's one from ore zone, and West African ore zone over here. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because Burkina Faso, unfortunately, has had an increase in terrorism. And this map's not that clear, but I'm starting with it for a reason. It shows a lot of recent negative activity, and something that really caught my attention. Semifo in August had 2 different attacks on their 2 mines. That really got my attention. I remember going to the Precious Metal Summit in Beaver Creek just a month later and talking to some people, and it was very eye-opening that things were getting worse. And I think since then, things have really gotten even further gotten worse. But even on this map, you can see most of the negative activity is over here. There was this one element in the Houndé Belt with Semifo, but that's important in itself. Oh, this Twitter account is worth a follow. Jose Luengo Cabrera. He's got these great charts that he creates. This is a lot to take in, but I think it's worth showing that these types of conflicts, and this does not include just terrorism. I think this includes almost too much, but it gives you a very good idea that Mali has been really the center of many of the problems going back to 2012. But the problems have increased in Burkina Faso. Now, it makes it look like the whole country is horrible, but Mali is still running fine. The best new gold mine in the world, Fekola, is over in this side of Mali, and it gives you an idea of how regional issues are really important to understand. The country did not go under, and I think the same could be said of Burkina Faso. But when we zoom in a bit, this is a little older. This is actually important too. Going back to early last year, it's been known that the whole border of Mali has been a danger zone, and even part of Niger. Unfortunately, this part has started to fill in. But you look at where Sarama is, and the Houndé Belt seems pretty fine. And even, we think of West African ore zone, those are 2 clusters that are in the quote-unquote better parts of Burkina Faso. I cannot estimate, or appreciate how important that is. They're not in the danger areas. But things do change. And this was a very valuable map, because this is specifically showing the jihadist groups. And you can see for 2 years, I'm sorry about that, 2016, 2017, it was very much in the north kind of central area. And look at 2018, explosion. And then provinces under state of emergency, that literally just happened in the last month. So I'm not trying to tell you Burkina's totally safe. And while I don't want to name it out of respect, unfortunately, this got a higher profile in Canada because a geologist was kidnapped and killed, and it was in this area, which we're going back. That was not in the super scary area, and now you could say that this is all filled in. because of that unfortunate attack. It was a private company and a very well respected geologist. It's just things have changed, and yet you have a big part of the country that is not under the state of emergency, including Sarama's projects in the southwest. So I think you have to take this all into account. Things could get worse down here, but that hasn't happened yet, and you do have to be more careful with the mines that are on these areas. Honestly, the Banfora project for Teranga is probably a little more at risk than some things here. Karma probably is. Essakane has always been in a tough position. That's with IAMGOLD, but they've been able to run it. I'm sure that the security is through the roof. Natugu for Semifo, that's the one that's really been hurt, but it's not around other mines. These clusters are really like the most important money makers for Burkina. So as long as the government's intact, they are going to do everything possible to make sure that the mines are producing and the developments happen in these two key areas. And I talk about the government because there was another scare. President appoints new prime minister last week. There was, a resignation of everyone in government at top levels of government except for the president. I'm not going to dwell on this, but I think this was actually a positive because they've brought in a new prime minister who had worked with Campore, the previous, dictator. Before a few years ago, there was a coup. We're past all of that. We're in a democracy now. But importantly, changes in government have just been made to increase the stability. But and this shows the current ministers. The mines minister hasn't changed. So we have the combination of hopefully more security with Burkina knowing it's urgent, but not having changes in the mining code or anything like that. So I think I'll leave that section at that, but it's so important to realize despite issues in Burkina, things still look relatively positive. Things have not changed in the mining world. But if you're going to look for signals, West African just 2 months ago got one of the best funding arrangements of any company in recent history. I mean, huge amount of money. So if you see West African, WAF, on both the ASX and the TSX, still moving forward, that's a very positive sign, as long as you don't see any negativity there. Then another one, Orezone. Actually, I wanted to point this out. It got hammered a bit right here, and it started to come back with huge insider buying. And this one's followed a lot more by, my North American friends or people who on CEO.CA. So that's a positive too. It almost makes you seem like a knee-jerk reaction of seeing that stock price go down. So Orezone still needs more financing, but we'll see if that happens. So those are two larger companies that are going to give you signals. As long as things are moving forward, that's good for Sarama as well. I didn't want to mention that. But that was just an old presentation I was looking at. Now, taking a different route, this might be a stretch for some people, but I think it's very important. There's a company called Minera Alamos, MAI, on the TSXV, getting a huge amount of attention. And I have a couple friends who are involved. Trevor Hall, who runs Mining Stock Daily, so a plug for my buddy Trevor, he just took on Minera Alamos as a sponsor to his great podcast, which you should check out. It's on all sorts of platforms, including Alexa, which he likes to point out. It's the only mining flash briefing on Alexa. So we'll see how that works. But Doug Ramshaw, who's seems to be respected by everybody, and I had a great meeting with him at VRIC last year. Hopefully I keep missing him at all the other conferences. But Minera Alamos has gotten so much attention, partially because Doug has spread the word. I bring it up, though, because I had a light bulb, a few weeks ago thinking, Minera Alamos is putting together these, these small heap leach projects. And then I was like, this sounds a lot like what Sarama is really pushing forward, but no one thinks of Sarama in this way. And it says proven mine building team. This Sarama's team is the most undervalued team for their mine building ability. And I have to tell you, in the past, I was much more skeptical of these, why should a company put these small heap leach projects together rather than looking to get acquired? Well, Minera Alamos and Sarama, I think they're hitting a very interesting trend where it's very hard to find any projects out there that work at $1,200 USD gold. And looking, I would love to go in more detail, but I think this is what's important. For both of these companies, what underpins the value? Minera Alamos has another project that is going to go into production, and I think it's going to be important, for cash flow and as part of their strategy. But the La Fortuna project, I think this underpins the value, and they've, got great numbers, ridiculous IRR, very low costs. It says 1250 gold, but really, this of course is going to work at $1,200 gold, but it's fairly small, 50,000 ounce per gold equivalent, and if I look at Sarama, so going back to this is one of the other great news slides. They can't put all the numbers out there yet, but based on rough estimations, and at least they do say this should work at $1,200 per pounds gold. The fact that Sarama is getting all the interest from the private equity firms, I think, they realize this can be a simple, very nice little project, and there would still be interest from a larger player. Now, Minera Alamos has a lot going on, but so does Sarama. They have different things. Minera Alamos is a 30 million market cap company, and quite possibly very undervalued. It's in Mexico. I think it's in some good parts of Mexico. But then we look at Sarama, 9 million. Now, you can talk about, it's because Burkina Faso is horrible and Mexico is great. I don't think that's true. I think Sarama's biggest difficulty is poor promotion, very much so with the retail market, versus Minera Alamos, which is one of the best. And kudos to Doug Ramshaw for being a big part of that. I've heard about Minera from so many people. And yet, even when you think of the jurisdictions, I love this. I have to give shout outs to my friend at Excelsior. Actually, at JMM, I don't even know him or her. Well, I'll have to reach out because this was just unexpected. There were two interesting posts about jurisdiction risk in Burkina Faso and Mexico, and I'll have all these links below this video. But really, the risks are different, and I don't want to say Burkina is like equally as safe as Mexico, but you have to. Both countries have different regional issues, and there are different, quote unquote, safe parts of the country. And I think you can legitimately say Burkina Faso is not all that far from far off from some parts of Mexico in terms of risk. A lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but really, if you think of all the factors, there's a legitimacy behind that. And importantly, if you look at Sarama under 10 million market cap, and that Minera Alamos has 30 million, you don't need Sarama to be at 30 million, but why wouldn't Sarama be at 20 million if they end up having a project that underpins the value that's close to as good as La Fortuna, and then they have all this other interesting stuff that's very different from Minera Alamos, but still, it's like both of them have all this icing on the cake. I think it's very interesting. It's actually hard to find that many other companies out there that have an interesting low capex, high IRR, heap leach type project that could be put into production soon. To be fair, Minera Alamos is more advanced, but then also having teams that know how to build them. And Andrew Dinning and Paul Schmid have worked together for years, and they worked for Western Mining in Australia going back a few decades. I mean, really, I can't dwell on it too much, but they have very strong backgrounds. And if you're serious about learning more about Sarama, I recommend you call or email those guys to see. This is an unusual company, not run by geos, even though they have a good geo in Jack Hamilton. Like, these guys know how to build mines. So I think that's really interesting. It might be worth discussing later, but we'll see if Sarama's re-rating is kind of related to catching up with a company like Minera Alamos. But here's something that Sarama has that Minera Alamos doesn't have. At least I don't think so. I don't think Minera Alamos is in a position to potentially get acquired. This is super important, but it's not even the priority anymore. This is a slide from Teranga. This is the one awesome slide because Teranga's next project is almost surely going to be Golden Hill. And you have this is their slides. All of this stuff is Sarama. This is actually the Sarama and Savary. And I can't even talk about it too much because it's not the main thing. If the center of gravity of Golden Hill is right here, Bondi is absolutely the strategic asset. But you can see that Teranga's already doing deals with this company called ACC, but this is very early stage. This is not at the level that Bondi's at. I'm gonna go come back to this in a minute, but I'm gonna play this for 40 seconds. This was a Q&A with Sapantadori, corporate development for Teranga. I was actually at this event, and this was kind of an eye opener. So listen in for 30, 40 seconds.
Thank you. Great presentation, Sapanta. Can you give us a sense of the initial maiden resource for Golden Hills that you mentioned is due January 19? And what type of recoverable ounces do you need before you commit to a construction and investment decision there? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Good question. Look, we're progressing really quickly on Golden Hill. Dave Mallow, VP Exploration, is here as well. The plan would be at least 1.5 million, certainly for an initial resource estimate. In terms of recoveries, flow sheet, we expect it will look quite similar to Wahgnion and Sabodala, but still early days. And what we plan to do is issue a PEA shortly after the initial resource estimate. So we'll have greater definition on all of those things in early 2019.
So my understanding, this could come this week or could come in the next month. I think it's so interesting because this is not even Sarama's main priority, but it's the wild card that keeps growing and growing. Teranga already has a small stake in Sarama, like this has been confirmed publicly. I don't know how serious Teranga wants to move on this, but the lower that Golden Hill estimate comes in, the more interesting it is to Sarama. I've even heard that Teranga's on record saying Golden Hill was supposed to have a 2 million ounce estimate. If it's 1.5 million or less, that's really good for Sarama because it means that they're probably if they're gonna try to aggressively push this forward, they need more ounces immediately, and Bondi is key. But I was also thinking, Sarama is so cheap, there is still a possibility that Teranga swoops in and pays a very large premium, but they still, end up buying all of Sarama. And what if this is my own idea? What if the center of gravity changes from here to Bondi? And then all of a sudden, the center is down here, and it means you can have South Houndé as a satellite and Golden Hill actually as a satellite. You're actually including more, and it becomes a larger thing. That is a total speculation on my part, but this is why you have the M&A is still so interesting around Sarama. They're in such a good spot, and really there should be probably a re-rating just from that fact. But keep in mind that is now secondary to Sarama having this standalone project. This is the number one reason Sarama should re-rate immediately, and probably what Teranga's doing, and what potentially other acquirers would be interested. That would be an important number two, but it's definitely taking a backseat to the ability of Sarama to have this nice little heap leach project that makes money at $1,200 gold. Getting long in the tooth here. There's so much more I can say, but again, simplify the story. So why are you listening to me? Like, why should you buy right now when it's at 5 cents? So new PowerPoint. I don't know if there's going to be much news, but yes, they need to raise money. I think at the lowest, it's going to be at this 5 cent level. Like, that's the lowest. I just don't see the raise coming any lower. And maybe that's the worst case scenario, is that they raise with existing investors, and it's like $2 or $3 million, and it is dilutive. But getting that money, they can immediately drill out some more oxides and improve the economics of this heap leach. And as they get closer to a PEA or a scoping study, and even get closer to an Australian listing, I think this thing starts to snowball. Of course, I said the same thing last year, but it was different. It didn't have the heap leach wasn't real. I said the same thing about the re-rating, but this is different. But they've got this great new PowerPoint, and there's going to be so much more exposure. I hadn't heard of this Arlington pre-Daba, but this is, the Cape Town conferences are undervalued. Sarama is going to be there. I mean, this website's not great, but I think this is a great conference. I kind of wish I could go. You can see Sarama down here. So that's February 1st through 3rd. Immediately afterwards, the 1-to-1 Cape Town. I was hoping I could go to this, but I had all this personal stuff come up. Oh well. But I think this is going to be awesome. And private equity type people are surely going to show up here, and other new people for exposure. So that's, in a week or two. And then this is like the elitist conference, but Sarama always goes to this, but I think they'll get more attention at the BMO conference in Florida at the end of February. and then PDAC, where I'm sure I will meet with Andrew, and they get more interest. So those are 4 major conferences, and it wouldn't surprise me if either in February or in March, perhaps a financing or some type of deal. So this could be private equity, could be strategic investment, or again, worst case scenario, could be existing investors. Something is going to happen with raising money. Trading at 5 cents now, I think there's a great case that this could be at 7 cents, 8 cents, let alone 10 cents. And if it's private equity or strategic investment, it could be a premium to that. So I'm not saying this is going to be a multi-bagger in the next few months, but I think very well could, a great scenario would be it's trading closer to 10 cents in a month or two because there's new buyers and, people realize this re-rating, that's why this slide's great. Like it really, there should be an immediate re-rating, but if it's trading at 10 cents and there's a strategic investment at 12 cents, hey, you just made over 100% of your money in a month or two. But you don't want to think of this as the short-term trade. I think this is a story that can finally move forward because Acacia is getting out of the way. And, by the end of the year, it could be at 20 cents or 30 cents, but you need the dominoes to fall in place. So the next month or two are crucial, and I'm trying to help by, being the unofficial marketing arm here. Again, totally independent. I own a lot of shares here right now, and I really want to see this, trading closer to 10 cents than 5 cents in the next couple weeks. And, I gave some shout outs. I just have to say, I like it that there are more people that are, on the Sarama train. And I feel bad for having been so excited about this over the last year or two with such a terrible chart. But I really think this is getting close to the bottom. And, why not have at least a small position at 5 cents? I hope I'm not wrong that it actually somehow a financing is lower, it trades lower, but I think we're very, very close to the bottom. And that's the great thing when you're underpinned by a real project. Final shout outs. There's so many other things I could touch on, but Jay Foster, who's also on CEO.CA, this is just important. Sarama, I think the salaries could be lower. I didn't really like seeing, the options come out this week, but still, these guys are serious. They've participating in the financings at much higher levels. Like these guys have skin in the game, and I appreciated Jay Foster mentioning this. I remember seeing this about a month ago, and this is also giving a shout out to Twitter. Like I like going back and forth between Twitter and CEO.CA because you get the best of both worlds. And just the other day, this was funny because I think this is a total coincidence. Literally yesterday, this new guy I follow, Goov, he posted about liking Minera Alamos and liking Sarama within 5 minutes of each other. So just kind of emphasizing, I think both of those are really interesting companies. I don't own Minera Alamos, but I think they could be a new trend. And, if you looked at both of them, Sarama definitely is the one that's really undervalued, but you could probably say that they both are. So I want to give a shout out to Goov because I thought it was nice to see him post. And obviously I think he knows what he's doing. So we'll leave it at that. I really hope I at least convinced you that there's a good reason for an immediate re-rate. Not saying it will happen. This is going to be a great story to follow this year. I'm sure of that. It needs some work, but we'll see what happens with these new conferences. And feel free to reach out to me at CEO.CA or in the YouTube notes below this video because I have a lot more to say. But again, simplifying the story, I think we're there. We'll see what happens. This is Nick the Mining Book Guy. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye.